Zella here again for Small Business Digest. Everybody's talking about inflation. Very, it depends on who you talk to. Very few are doing anything about it, or they're doing too much, depending where you are. But we have with us Dan Varonny today. He's going to talk about inflation, about the effect on small business. Dan, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Don. I am glad to be here with you.
Dan, before we go further, as we ask all our guests, tell us a little bit about yourself, then about your company, and then finally a website where people can learn more.
Sure. Well, my name is Dan Varonny. I have a extensive background in trade associations, spending most of my career at the National Association of Manufacturers. And after that, worked for some other organizations, and about 11 years ago, decided that I wanted to open a company, but open a company that would be focused on building industry and trade association strategic partnerships. And the reason why I did that is because I saw it as essential for helping industries overcome challenges and position for growth. So I opened my company to build those partnerships, to provide the necessary market research, to identify the industry challenges and build those partnerships. And I work with industries, all types of industries. And in addition to that, about 2 years ago, started writing what is my first book, Reimagining Industry Growth. It is about successful partnerships between trade associations and industries, and how these partnerships are helping their industry segments overcome challenges and over the long term become more durable and position them for growth. My company can be found at potomaccore.com, and the book Reimagining Industry Growth can be found at amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and Books A Million. And it launched in January of this year, and I'm pleased to say the book is doing very well, and I'm happy to talk about it.
Okay, we will later on in the program. But let's start this program. Most of our listeners are small business. What's happening today in this world that makes it that much more difficult for small businesses, whether they're with an association or not? And I want to get into that as well. To survive in this changing world?
Well, I think at the bottom line, let's go right to the bottom line, that it's small businesses are an essential component of the U.S. economy. 3 of 4 every new jobs created come from small business. So when we look at small business today, small businesses are challenged in a very significant way when it comes to inflation. So if you're a small business, you're going into the marketplace and you've got to buy, if you're a manufacturer, you've got to buy raw materials and different parts and supplies to make your product. And then you've got to ship your product. So your cost of raw materials is higher because of inflation. So it's costing you more to buy those goods to make your products. And then when it comes to shipping, it's costing a lot more to ship. So where are all these costs coming from? So when you look at fuel today, if you're running a small business, you're paying a lot more for your energy. You're paying a lot more for your electricity. So your bottom line is getting squeezed for electricity. Your bottom line is getting squeezed because you're paying more for raw materials and costs and goods to make your products. And you're paying a lot more to ship and deliver your finished goods. And the reason why you're paying more there is because a lot of shipping companies are using diesel fuel. Diesel fuel is up significantly, and it costs even more than regular gasoline. So for small business owners today, they're being squeezed by energy costs. And the other way that small business owners are being squeezed is the cost of labor. They're having to pay more. They're having to pay more not only to get new employees, but to keep their current employees. So what inflation has done has raised the cost of small business. And right now they're getting squeezed, and it's a big challenge for them.
Well, I'll ask you the question, which I don't know if you have an answer, but what caused inflation? I mean, all of a sudden we sat here with 3% or less, then all of a sudden now have, depending on who you listen to, 9 or 10% inflation.
Well, it's probably closer. Well, let me just tell you that the latest information I have, it's more likely closer to 11%, Don. So it's an even bigger challenge. So when you look at the Milton Friedman thinking on this, it's the notion that you've got too many dollars chasing too few goods, right? So uh, it's a demand challenge. So when there's too few goods and a lot of dollars, you create a sense of scarcity. That scarcity elevates prices. So when you look at oil, for example, so when we stop doing as much domestic drilling and we're bringing oil in, we're about 1 million barrels a day of oil short. So we've got some scarcity going on in oil. So therefore, if you've got a lot of people wanting to fill their tanks up, that raises the price. That's really one of the things that's driving inflation. Another thing that's driving inflation is that if you're paying employees higher wages, right, that has an inflationary impact as well. So those are the types of things that are causing inflation.
Mm. Well, someone has said that there's a certain segment of the American political spectrum that wants higher uh, energy prices because then they believe that alternatives will become more attractive.
So I think that's an interesting point, but I listen to a much broader perspective, which is that when you look at energy, what you're really looking for is an all of the above strategy. And here's why I say this: that when we all believe that we want clean air, we all believe we want clean water, but the point is what's the strategy to get from where we are to all electric vehicles? What's the strategy from where we are to have uh, solar energy? So the answer is we've got a policy minus a strategy. So from a business perspective, what we need to do is have a much broader focus. And what I mean by that is we need to leverage all available sources of energy until we get the best strategy to get us from where we are today to where we want to be in terms of less fossil fuels.
Well, let's go back to your book. Tell us what's the basic premise of your book.
So what was clear to me, two things were clear to me. One is that we had two significant events happen. The first was 2008, 2009, we had the economic crash, right? The second thing was COVID. COVID was far more serious because well over 1 million people lost their lives here and it was just a serious loss of life. But what was clear to me is that the world was going to change, and the world has changed. Anybody that thinks that we're ever going to revert back to where things were 2 years ago, it's just not going to happen. So what I did is I spent the time in quarantine thinking about a new and different future, about how industries could reimagine growth. So what I did is I wrote a book, and this book is a call to action for every industry executive in this country. And it's a call to action for them to identify who their trade associations are and to go and engage with their trade associations to identify the most common issues, the pre-competitive issues that they need to address, the challenges that they need to overcome, and the things that they need to do as an industry to position for growth. And I identified 5 industries that had built these partnerships: the recreational boating industry, the baking industry, the unmanned systems industry, the frozen food industry, and the asphalt pavement industry. In all 5 of those cases, industry leaders and the boards of directors who represent industry leaders of those particular industries leverage those trade associations to build industry strategies to overcome challenges and position the industry for growth. So what I'm talking about is a different type of strategic partnership, a strategic partnership where the trade association literally has the look and feel of an industry, that they're acting as a strategic business unit of the industry, not just as a trade association. So some examples of this would be the recreational boating industry, for example. When the pandemic hit and we went into shutdown, none of us could go anywhere, but we could go outside. We could engage in outdoor recreation. We could go boating on the water. So what the National Marine Manufacturers Association did, they are the strategic partner to the recreational boating industry, is they built a partnership with the Recreational Boating and Fishing Foundation. They bought digital ads and they promoted outdoor recreation and boating to people looking for alternatives to staying inside and remaining and maintaining their safety. So that effort in particular helped the industry grow their revenues by 20%, 20% year over year. And so the revenues were increased so much that it represented 300,000 unit boat sales. That's a number the recreational boating industry never thought they would achieve after the Great Recession in 2008, 2009. So that would be an example of the types of things that would happen. But what these partnerships do is they unite the entire supply chain and value chains of industry, and they utilize that leverage to overcome these challenges, to work with legislators and regulators in a very powerful way.
Well, our audience is small business, and I know that's a powerful tool, but a small business owner will tell you, I don't have time to join an association, and what's more, I don't know what association I should join, whether it should be one on small business or should be one for what my business is about, dry cleaning, whatever it happens to be. What do you say to that?
I think that's a very fair point, but I'll offer the alternative perspective. What if the small businesses could be with their customers, potential customers, and their suppliers? And the answer is, if they could, it would be an excellent use of their time. They would receive a return on the investment of their time and their money. If they can sit at a table with customers and suppliers and build pre-competitive solutions that lead to long-term growth for the industry, then it's a significant return on their investment. Most trade associations, the lion's share of them are represented by small businesses. It's a mistake for any small business owner to not engage. It could be at their industry-specific association, but most of these industry-specific trade associations today have either the suppliers or customers or both. And they want to engage there because this is an opportunity for them to influence and shape the external environment, either with their customers and suppliers. A very, very important investment. I argue they're missing a bet by not engaging.
Your book again for our audience and where they can get it?
Sure. It's called Reimagining Industry Growth, and you can get it at Amazon.com. You can get it at BarnesandNoble.com. You can get it at BooksAMillion.com, or you can go into the Barnes and Noble bookstore and you can purchase it there. It's available.
Okay. Well, Dan, let's explore this a little further. No, I'm a dry cleaner. Okay, my biggest problem is getting the cleaning fluids for dry. There was a massive changeover years ago from one sort of cleaning fluid to another, and it still cost me and the industry millions of dollars. How do I go about influencing so that some EPA or somebody doesn't come in and say you've got to change again?
So this is why it's imperative to join. So they can join their industry trade association. They can join the National Federation of Independent Business. If they're retailers, they can join the National Retail Federation. These organizations have got the leverage and the clout because they've got suppliers and customers at the table. And they are very effective at quantifying these things. And most importantly, they understand how to build relationships and partnerships with regulators so they understand what the dollar impact is on small business. Again, small businesses play an enormous role in the US economy. 3 out of 4 new jobs that are created come from small business. If we're doing things that harm small business, that will hurt job creation. If you hurt job creation, you're harming the economy. We are a 70% consumer driven economy, Don. At the end of the day, small businesses are substantial contributors to the health and well-being of the US economy.
Well, I'll throw a curve at you, but here in New Jersey and several other states, they closed down small businesses during the pandemic and allowed the big businesses like Kohl's and Walmart to remain open. That's hard. It seems to me that the politicians the government pays lip service to what you're saying, but then again, does seems to kowtow to the um, to the lobbyists for the big companies. Um, how, what can small businesses do? I keep coming back to that because uh, you're the first person we've had on this program in a long time that's really talking sense. So go ahead.
Sure. So I want to cite another example from my book, and this is a very powerful example, Don. So one of the chapters in the book is about the baking industry, and you and your listeners are going to find this especially interesting. So during the pandemic, the state of New Jersey wanted to shut down the independent distributors. It just so happens that the independent distributors is how our bread, our donuts, our cookies, our cakes get to the food stores. I don't know about you, Don, but I would miss my donuts. And what the American Bakers Association did through its ecosystem is it created local partnerships and brought to bear their leverage on the state of New Jersey. And the state of New Jersey allowed the independent distributors to operate. A lot of these independent distributors are small businesses. I'm citing this as an example, and I am reiterating passionately my call to action for small businesses to engage in their industry trade association. The American Bakers Association moved mountains for the independent distributors in the state of New Jersey. Small businesses need to identify their trade associations and they need to get to work.
Well, then let me ask you, you're an association veteran. Um, what makes up the board? How do people become board members? And, and I'll leave it at that and leave the question open to you.
So I think it varies and differs from association to association. But here's what I will tell you, is that every board is looking for accomplished entrepreneurs, people who've been very successful in their individual field. They've got a unique perspective. They've grown their business and they join the organizations. They get active on the committee. They become introduced to other board members. And that level of recognition and contribution will help them at some point get elevated to the board of directors. But it's people who are knowledgeable. They've got an area of expertise. They know how to speak to the issues. They know the direction of the industry. They understand the challenges the industry is facing. They've overcome a lot of challenges themselves, and regardless of those challenges, they're successful. Believe me, there are plenty of opportunities and plenty of room for small business owners to serve on boards of directors of these trade associations. In many cases, trade associations are looking for people or looking for small business leaders who have been very successful to serve on boards of directors. They're invaluable.
Well, I'll ask you another question. What's the benefit to the individual by joining a board, by becoming active?
That is an outstanding question. So look at it this way. If you're looking, think of it this way. Let's take a step back and let's say we want to create a rising tide that lifts all boats strategy. For that small business owner, the return on your time and money is as follows. You can build a better strategic partnership between the industry and the trade association. You can focus the trade association on those 1, 2, or 3 areas that are the biggest challenges and position it to overcome those challenges and help the industry achieve growth. So think of it as investing time to be able to shape the external environment through your work on the board of directors. This is an outstanding use of that person's time.
Your book again, and where people can get it?
It's called Reimagining Industry Growth, and Reimagining Industry Growth is available at Barnes and Noble, either online or in the bookstore. It's online immediately today. You can order it today and have it tomorrow from Amazon.com. You can also get it at Books A Million, or you can go to the publisher's website. That's Wiley, WYLIE.com, and you can order the book from them, and you can have it in a day or two.
Dan, Valerie, we have just a couple of minutes left. What would you like to leave our audience with?
We are in an absolutely critical time in this country. Small businesses play an important role, not only in the present, but in the future success of this economy. It's important and incumbent for every small business owner to today identify your trade association, to join if you're not a member, to get engaged, get active, find ways to be a leader, and start moving the ball forward and building strategic partnerships between the industry and the trade association. It's a rising tide that lifts all boats. You're going to be able to change the game over the long term. I encourage you to take that action today.
Well, on that note, Dan, we say thank you so much for a very interesting and illuminating time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your program.